Okay, we didn't learn for a long time back to halacha. So the last thing we're learning is what's called halachos asuris, forbidden foods. And the last thing we discussed was milchiks and fleishiks, meat and milk. And we said that meat and milk, the Torah says 3 times you can't cook goat in its mother's milk. So from there the Gemara learns out why does the Torah say it 3 times? Once you can't cook it, cooking itself is biblically forbidden. Eating it and benefiting from it. So if it's meat and milk together, it's biblically forbidden to cook, it's biblically forbidden to eat, it's biblically forbidden to have pleasure. We also discussed that chicken is only rabbinically forbidden. Why is chicken rabbinically forbidden? Because the Torah says, do not cook a kid in its mother's milk. Now chickens' mothers don't have milk. So therefore, chicken is really rabbinically forbidden. It doesn't matter, but it does matter in one din. Because, for instance, chicken and milk, you could benefit from. Because it's only rabbinic, they only forbade it from eating. But let's say you have, I'm going to tell you what we discussed this a while ago. Let's say you have animal food, dog food, cat food, that has meat and milk in it. So if it has meat and milk in it, then you can't benefit from it, so you can't feed it to your dog. Even though your dog doesn't have to keep kosher, but you're benefiting from the meat and milk, from the food, that the cat food or the dog food, or any other animal. So if, let's say, it's chicken and milk in the ingredients, then you could feed it to the animals. You could feed it to your dog.
So there is a kosher dog and cat food?
One sec. Now, what happens, another din is, that what happens if it's pig meat, in other words, forbidden meat, and milk, so then it's only forbidden to eat. It's not forbidden to benefit from. Because it's already forbidden. So you can't make it more forbidden. Okay? So therefore, let's say you have beef in this dog food, let's say. It wasn't slaughtered, but the fact that it's a kosher animal, and you have beef together with milk in animal food, so then you wouldn't be allowed to benefit from it because it's beef and milk. But if it's pig or camel or horse meat, whatever, together with milk, so obviously you can't eat it, but you're allowed to benefit from it. The reason why the only issue really is Pesach. Because Pesach, a lot of the dog foods have grains in them. If they have grains in them, it's chametz. And again, you can't benefit. So over there's lists for Pesach, there's lists to tell you which ones are kosher for Pesach, which ones are not. They don't have supervision. There's no kosher dog food. I mean, not that I've ever seen or heard of. And the reason for that, all you have to do is check the ingredients. If there's no beef and milk, so then it's not a problem. You don't need the rabbinic supervision on the dog food or the cat food. As long as there's no beef and milk together, then it would be fine. Okay, next is like this. You also can't, so therefore, because you're not allowed to mix meat and milk together, and this a lot of people are lenient in it, it's because of ignorance, so you need to have separate utensils. You have to have separate utensils for meat and separate utensils for milk. Because if you have a meat utensil that you made soup, or beef, let's say you cook meat, and then there's beef absorbed within the walls of the vessel, like we learned, and then you're going to cook milk in it, so then you're going to have a mixture of meat and milk. So therefore you have to have separate pots and pans. Therefore, you can't even use the same dishwasher for meat and milk. Because again, the water is hot, you're putting meat dishes and milk dishes in at the same time, or even one after another, it doesn't matter. But meanwhile, the dishwasher, which has using hot water, is mixing up the meat and milk, and therefore the dishwasher would become treif, practically speaking. But, so therefore people have to be careful. In fact, it says that there was an old tradition, in Shulchan Aruch it says that there's a minig to mark the knife, which is designated for dairy, that people shouldn't come to use it for meat. But years ago, it's not done today, and the older women are screaming about it, but years ago, there was in all religious Jewish homes, red was meat and blue was dairy. That was it. even though it had no halachic basis to it. But this became what was called tradition. You know, real tradition was meat was red. It has red towels, red tablecloths, red dishes, you know, whatever. If somebody years ago, God forbid, bought a brand new china set, blue for meat, the mothers-in-law and the mothers would not eat in your house. It's a treifa house because you're having blue with meat, and that's treif because blue is dairy and meat is red. I mean, you know, you can understand it's nothing to do with each other. But today already they don't do it so much. But people need, I'll tell you something, a lot of times you get calls. People have cutlery that are identical, meat and milk. And inevitably they get mixed up, and then you don't even know what's meat and what's milk. So halachically you need to have separate cutlery, different design at least, that you should know what's meat and what's milk, and different glasses for meat and milk, and all these things, because you wash them all together with hot stuff, or you drink hot stuff in it. So it's very important for people to realize you need to have separate tablecloths, separate placemats, or let's say you could do something else. Let's say you can eat on the table dairy, on the bare table, and then if you want to eat meat, they'll put a towel, or put a tablecloth, or placemats, whatever. As long as there's a separation between meat and milk. In fact, the Shulchan Aruch, it says, if you're eating lunch, or breakfast, doesn't matter, but let's say lunch, you're eating on the same table with a friend of yours, and you have a cheese sandwich, and he has a cold cut sandwich, that deli sandwich. You're not allowed to eat at the same table. Why? Because if you know each other, people forget, they start sharing, you know, let me taste this, let me taste this. People you don't know, we're not afraid that you're going to share. But if you're having the same table with a friend of yours and you're going to have one meat and one milk, so then it says in halacha you're not allowed to sit at the same table unless if there's a sign, so to speak, not a written sign, but a recognition between them that you're not going to be doing it. Okay, yeah, that's what it says. Two Jews that know each other, you're not allowed to eat bread. It's on the same table, one meat and one milk, until they make a recognition that this one eats on one placemat, this one eats on a different placemat, whatever. As long as there's a sign to remind them not to mix the meat and the milk together. This happens very often in preschools where kids share snacks. You know, little kids, they don't know anything, they share snacks. So you have to be careful that you shouldn't be mixing meat and milk together. Okay. Now, what happens if somebody ate meat and now they want to eat dairy? So then the din is they're not allowed to eat dairy after meat for 6 hours. Now, there's two reasons in halacha for this din. One reason is that it takes 6 hours for the meat to digest in the stomach. So if you have meat, let's say in an hour later you're going to have milk, so you end the stomach, you're mixing meat and milk before it gets digested. But l'mashal, that's a chumrah, but it says in Allah you have to keep 6 hours. The Jews from Amsterdam, the yakis as they're called, some have a tradition of 3 hours, and halacha says nobody knows the source of that. Like, where does that custom of 3 hours come from? But in Shulchan Aruch it does say that, let's say if somebody is sick, not deathly obviously, but somebody is sick, and they have meat, and they want to drink milk, so they can wait an hour after the meat to the milk, but they have to rinse their mouth and eat something in between. And it can be at the same meal. That means if you have some, you have to make an after bracha, but that's if somebody is sick. That's why, for instance, kids under 2, according to all opinions, kids under 2, according to halacha, are considered, have a din of a sick person, because they have needs, you know, the kids are kids. So let's say a kid ate dinner, had a meat for dinner, and now they're going to sleep and they want their bottle of milk. Now kids have to keep kosher, the Jewish kids. I mean, an obligator, you don't want kid eating treif. So halacha says if they're under 2, they have to wait an hour between milk and meat and milk. After 2, some parts can say if it's really dire, they're desperate, they're screaming their heads off and they want to go to sleep, so you can be makel over 2 also. But generally it's better after 2 to start being stricter amount of time we wait between meat and milk. What? 6 hours is the minig. But again, there's 2 reasons. One reason is because that's how long it takes the food to digest. Second reason is because for 6 hours the food gets stuck in the teeth. So therefore, because food gets stuck in the teeth, so then you might have meat in your tooth and then you're eating milk. But Shulchan Aruch says like this: what happens after 6 hours? You found you're about to eat milk and you realize there's meat in your teeth. So it says you clean out the tooth, the mouth, and you rinse it and eat something. You don't have to wait 6 hours again. The difference between these 2 opinions, and it says in halacha we're strict according to both opinions. For instance, what happens if somebody swallows chicken soup without chewing it? They don't chew it. So according to the reason that because of what's stuck in between the teeth, then you don't have to wait 6 hours. If you hold the reason is because of digestive system, then you still have to wait 6 hours. The opposite way would be, years ago they didn't have blenders. How did they blend food for kids? So in halacha it says what they used to do is the mothers would chew the food. She'd take a piece of meat, chew it, and then give it to the kid. But she didn't swallow it. But she chewed it. So if the reason is because of the stomach, she didn't eat it. You don't have to wait 6 hours. If the reason is because it gets stuck between the teeth, you have to wait 6 hours.
What if it's just
1 second. What happens if a woman, I'm saying woman because that's usual. Let's say she's tasting, she made chicken soup. Okay? She takes a small, they taste it. So they don't swallow it. Let's say they mamish taste it in the mouth and they spit it out. So then you don't have either reason. You don't have the reason of the teeth. You don't have the reason of the digestive system. So then halacha says, all she has to do is rinse her mouth and eat something and they can go straight ahead to milk. To dairy. They don't need to wait 6 hours. But what?
Sometimes you feel after even 6 hours, it's still... meat is
But halacha says after that is not a problem.
Even if sometimes you burp, you can feel that.
I understand, but halacha says after 6 hours it's fine. Then it's fine. It's not an issue. So that's basically the 2 reasons why you need to wait the 6 hours. And again, but you have to rinse your mouth, you have to eat something, and it cannot be in the same meal. And that's what happens if you sat down Shabbos afternoon to eat a Shabbos meal, and you're going long for bringing, into the night, and now it's 6 hours later you want to eat pizza. So it's not enough just to make Havdalah. You have to actually bench the Birkat Hamazon, or after bracha, and then you rinse your mouth, and then you can go. But it can't be in the same meal. What? Oh.
I was just going to say, if it's chicken soup, but no chicken, only the liquid.
There's a rule in halacha that's called tam ki'ikar. The taste of something is like the thing itself. So if you eat chicken soup or meat broth, right, that doesn't have any meat pieces of meat in it, halachically it's like you ate meat. So even though the reason of chewing won't apply, stuck between the teeth, but the other reason applies, and therefore you still have to wait 6 hours.
Why do you have to wait longer for Parmesan cheese?
Well, but until now, we're talking from meat to milk. Now there's a din of milk to meat. So that we're not going to start today. We'll start that whenever.
But liquid digests much faster than solid.
There's a story they bring down by Shavuos with the Chassam Sefer that he drank milk and he didn't want to wait and that, whatever. There's a whole, the coffee spilled out. He was going to take a cup of coffee and it was milk, whatever, and the coffee spilled out. Or whatever. Machat shinus or meiser mar nach reva mein kim shvlag out teira bkhanan mikashe